Okay, buckle up, because this story is about to get wetter than a frog in a rainstorm and a whole lot more ridiculous. My name is Mason Tilden, and I'm what you might call a semi-retired software engineer. I swapped out the endless nights of debugging code for the equally demanding, yet oddly satisfying, afternoons of perfecting my lawn. But the crown jewel of my humble suburban life is unquestionably my backyard pool, a shimmering oasis of chlorinated bliss that serves as the perfect escape from the mundane rhythms of Oakwood Estates. Now, Oakwood Estates is one of those suburban paradises with its fair share of quirks that, much like a persistent mosquito, tend to annoy you until you finally have to address them. One such quirk is the presence of certain residents whose entitlement seems to flow as freely as the community sprinkler system. And wouldn't you know it? My pool quickly became ground zero for one such specimen. A notorious figure known throughout the estate for her self-appointed authority and unyielding standards. I'll call her Karen, as she's become synonymous with the very type of person you'd expect to impose unrealistic rules on a community. It was a balmy Tuesday, a scorcher of a day when the air hung thick and heavy, while I was leisurely floating in my pool, barely able to remember the name of that one actor from a movie I'd half forgotten, that I first noticed the commotion. The pool, my pride and joy, had always been a refuge from the suburban doldrums, a place to relax and lose oneself in the simple pleasures of life. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. As I was enjoying my chill afternoon, a sudden ripple of disturbance on the manicured lawn caught my attention. It wasn't until the sound of raised voices reached my ears that I realized something was amiss. Karen, the ever-vigilant enforcer of our little community's unspoken rules, had appeared on my property, her demeanor as prickly as ever. I could tell by the stern set of her jaw and the disapproval etched onto her face that she had come with a purpose. Her presence was as unexpected as it was unwelcome. Amid the glitter of the sunlight reflecting off the water, Karen had an unmistakable air of authority about her. I wasn't sure what prompted her arrival that day. Perhaps it was one of those random days when she felt compelled to protect the community, but the effect was immediate. The atmosphere, usually so carefree by my pool, became charged with tension and anticipation. Little did I know at that moment that this serene oasis of mine was about to become the epicenter of suburban drama, a drama that would spiral into a series of absurd events filled with humor, misunderstanding, and a touch of rebellion. And so, as Karen's determined footsteps approached, I could only brace myself for the onslaught of complaints, rules, and regulations that were sure to follow in her wake. It was a sultry Tuesday afternoon when I, Mason Tilden, decided to seek respite in the backyard pool, a shimmering oasis of chlorinated bliss that I had painstakingly maintained to escape the ennui of suburban life in Oakwood Estates. The gentle lap of water against the tiled edge and the sparkle of sunlight on rippling waves had become my daily therapy since trading my long nights debugging code for afternoons perfecting my lawn. As I floated lazily on my back, lost in reverie and trying to recall the name of that movie actor whose face had haunted the recesses of my memory, the answer, I later discovered, was Benedict Cumberbatch. I noticed a ripple not caused by the water. From the far side of the pool, a tall, athletic figure ambled up. A newly arrived neighbor whose presence was as noticeable as it was inviting. He introduced himself with a booming, friendly, "Afternoon, Mason," that carried across the manicured lawns. His smile, warm and disarming, was the type that could, in its own way, melt even the iciest dispositions. I soon learned his name was Dylan Rivera. There was something about his casual confidence and relaxed air that suggested he'd known the secret to enjoying life in Oakwood Estates for a long time. Dylan hopped into the pool with a splash and joined me for a leisurely swim. His strokes were smooth and sure, evidence of his college swimming days, and in between laps we exchanged friendly banter. We discussed everything from our favorite dive techniques to our mutual, almost comically earnest, recollections of movie stars. Amid the banter, Dylan's effortless charm, and yes, the fact that he was black, which would soon take on additional significance, lent a refreshing counterpoint to the idiosyncrasies of life here. The pool, which had always been my sanctuary, now felt even more inviting as conversation flowed. Dylan mentioned how he'd moved into Oakwood Estates only a short while ago and was eager to meet people who weren't consumed solely by the relentless pursuit of perfection. "It's the little imperfections," he said, glancing around at the flawlessly trimmed hedges and sparkling pool, "that give a place its soul." I couldn't agree more. We laughed over the struggles of figuring out high-tech gadgets and compared notes about our favorite pool floats. I had a particularly quirky inflatable swan that I cherished. I found myself pleasantly surprised. Here was someone who appreciated life's lighter side, someone who didn't mind the occasional dip or even a minor mishap with the pool's smart features. As we floated side by side, the heat of the day faded into a congenial haze, making even the most elusive memories seem within reach. Yet, as the afternoon unfolded in this idyllic embrace of aquatic leisure and friendly chatter, I couldn't shake the feeling that Oakwood Estates harbored its own set of unwritten rules and personalities not entirely content with mere water and sunshine. Even the gentle breezes carried whispers of suburban drama. I'd heard murmurs of a resident with an extreme sense of civic duty, a person who, when provoked, could turn the calmest day into a maelstrom of outrage. I made a mental note to stay aware. For now, however, I was content to enjoy the easy camaraderie that Dylan brought to an otherwise ordinary day. As the sun began its slow descent and the pool water turned a deeper, more inviting blue, our conversation drifted from casual pleasantries to reflections on community and the intricate tapestry of neighbors at Oakwood Estates. Dylan confessed that he appreciated finding pockets of genuine friendliness in a neighborhood that sometimes prized appearance over authenticity. I, too, felt that beneath all the pristine lawns and polished facades, there was a genuine longing for connection. Little did I know, that peaceful camaraderie was destined to be punctured by an unexpected interruption, a character who would soon make the calm surface of my aquatic haven ripple with turmoil. But for that sunlit, languid afternoon, Dylan and I simply enjoyed our time together, blissfully unaware that the coming hours would transform our serene pool into ground zero for suburban absurdity. After a few leisurely laps and a shared laugh over our mutual struggles with technology, Dylan joking that he often debates with his smart home just to feel human, I began to notice subtle undercurrents that disrupted the otherwise perfect harmony of that idyllic afternoon. As Dylan and I discussed which swim strokes best suited our temperaments, he advocated for the butterfly for its expressive flair, while I preferred the simplicity of the breaststroke. A peculiar tension began to shadow our conversation. The tranquility of our pool oasis was briefly interrupted by a soft murmur of discontent emanating from beyond our immediate circle. At first, we attributed it to the playful splashing of a family nearby. Yet as minutes passed, the voices grew sharper and carried an underlying note of authority. I casually glanced over the side of the pool and saw a figure advancing with determined steps along the pool deck, a figure whose presence had sparked whispered speculations among longtime residents of Oakwood Estates. It was then that I recognized the unmistakable gait and demeanor of someone known for their relentless enforcement of community standards, a person often colloquially referred to as Karen. Though I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, a chill of apprehension ran down my spine as I realized that trouble was about to surface. I had heard legends around Oakwood Estates, tales of a resident who would stop at nothing to preserve what they considered suburban perfection. And now, this mysterious arrival was headed straight for my backyard pool. I attempted to return to light-hearted conversation with Dylan, but an uneasy feeling settled over the water. Our discussion turned to the trivial details of technology and design, though the subject of personal expression kept surfacing, an ironic parallel to the very situation I was about to face. "You know," Dylan remarked with a wry smile between laps, "sometimes it's the little differences that make our community so vibrant. Imagine if everyone looked the same." I nodded in agreement, trying to shake off the impending sense of foreboding. Then, as the late afternoon sun slanted lower, the newcomer drew closer. I could see her silhouette more clearly, a determined stance, a pair of dark sunglasses shielding eyes that glittered with disapproval, and an unmistakable air of self-appointed authority. The chatter from nearby residents hushed, and I sensed that the stage was being set for a confrontation. My heart began to pound in quiet anticipation, and I braced myself for what was clearly coming. The air around the pool grew heavier, and for a moment, it seemed as if the very atmosphere was charged with impending drama. I continued to float, trying to remain as calm and collected as possible while inwardly preparing for the inevitable storm that was about to erupt on my property. Dylan's light-hearted humor wavered as he too picked up on the tension, and though his eyes still twinkled with good humor, they betrayed a flicker of worry. Amid this rising tension, I couldn't help but reflect on the nature of Oakwood Estates. A community celebrated for its manicured lawns and smooth exteriors, yet simultaneously riddled with undercurrents of passion and intolerance. The dichotomy struck me as both ironic and profoundly unsettling, a tranquil suburban paradise that could so swiftly spiral into chaos over the minutiae of aesthetics and rules. As the newcomer finally neared the edge of the pool, I caught her expression, a mix of stern determination and barely concealed outrage. It was clear that her arrival was not accidental. She had a mission, one that would soon ripple through the calm blue waters of my prized backyard haven. Little did Dylan and I know that this moment would mark the turning point of our peaceful afternoon, morphing our poolside banter into a prelude to the coming storm, one that would soon bring rules, regulations, and the brewing tempest of suburban absurdity crashing into our sanctuary. Just as Dylan and I began to settle back into our poolside banter, the tension reached its breaking point. The newcomer, a figure whose presence radiated an aura of unyielding authority, revealed herself. With a brisk stride and an unmistakable air of self-importance, she halted at the edge of my pool. Her crisp, floral sundress strained at the seams, and her oversized sunglasses mirrored her resolute expression. This, I soon learned, was Karen, a resident who fancied herself a guardian of Oakwood Estate's pristine standards. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice sharp as shattered glass and carrying effortlessly over the water's edge. Instantly, the pleasant atmosphere I had cultivated was shattered. Karen's eyes narrowed as she surveyed my backyard, fixating not on the sparkling water or the relaxed joy of swimming but on my property's central feature, my beloved pool. "I need to check the pool water's quality," she declared, puffing out her chest as if announcing a civic duty that only she could perform. I blinked, taken aback by her sudden intrusion. "I'm sorry, did you say you need to check the water?" I managed to ask, my tone a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Karen's response came swiftly, leaving little room for negotiation. "Yes, I do. I'm on the HOA Pool Monitoring Committee," she insisted, even though I had never heard of such a committee in action. In my mind, it seemed like a self-appointed title that Karen had donned on her own, an assertion of power that was as baseless as it was bold. I tried to explain calmly, "Karen, I handle the pool chemicals myself. I tested the water this morning, it's perfectly fine." But my words were drowned out by her escalating fervor. "That's not acceptable. I need to see for myself," she snapped, her tone leaving no doubt that her authority was non-negotiable. Before I could further clarify, Karen's gaze shifted dramatically toward Dylan, who was still leisurely treading water near the deep end. "Who is this?" she demanded sharply, eyes narrowing with suspicion as she pointed at Dylan. I quickly interjected, "Karen, this is Dylan Rivera, he's a new neighbor and my guest." However, Karen's attention remained fixed on him, her voice laced with an intensity that belied the mildness of our gathering. "He's not supposed to be here," she sputtered, her words tumbling out as if she were reciting a list of grievances. "This is private property, and you're all trespassing." I felt a prickle of annoyance mix with disbelief. "Now, Karen, please, Dylan is my guest," I corrected, my voice steady but firm as I tried to restore order. "There's no threat here, I assure you the water is safe." But Karen, undeterred by my reassurances, shook her head as if in disbelief at my cavalier attitude. Without warning, Karen's tone shifted from questioning to accusatory. "You out of the pool now," she screamed, her voice escalating to a pitch that could shatter glass. Before I could defuse the situation further, she whipped out her phone, dialing what I assumed was the local emergency line. The sound of her shrill voice, laden with distorted details, claiming there was a stranger in the pool and insisting that I was permitting trespassers, set off a chain reaction among the few onlookers gathering on my patio. Dylan, visibly rattled, began to tread more anxiously in the water, his earlier cheer replaced by uncertainty. I stepped forward, raising my hands in a placating gesture. Karen, I must insist, this is my property, and David. I mean, Dylan is my guest, I repeated calmly, yet firmly, hoping to bring some rationality back to the situation. But Karen, fixated on her self-appointed mission, would have none of it. Her face contorted with indignation as she insisted, I'm protecting the community. I'm on duty, even if the HOA isn't officially monitoring the pool, it is my civic responsibility. Each word that tumbled out from her lips was laced with a fervor that bordered on hysteria. At that moment, the sound of approaching sirens punctuated the heated air, an ominous promise that the absurdity of the moment was about to take a dramatic turn. As the first hints of blue and red lights appeared on the manicured lawns of Oakwood Estates, I realized that Karen's intrusion and her unsanctioned water test had forced all of us into an escalating debacle that would soon demand more than just verbal resolution. Before long, the light-hearted afternoon of cannonball splashes and shared laughter with Dylan Rivera took an abrupt turn. Just as our banter about stroke techniques and favorite summer tunes was settling into comfortable ease, the atmosphere shifted. An undercurrent of rising tension crackled like static on a humid day. It began when Karen, ever the self-appointed sentinel of Oakwood Estates, reached a fever pitch. Her phone clutched tightly in one hand, Karen's shrill declaration over the pool's edge, "This is private property, and you're trespassing," cut through the gentle lapping of water. In a moment that seemed as if time were slowing, she dialed 911 with the fervor of someone convinced that the sanctity of our community was under siege. I stood near the shallow end, equally stunned and alarmed, while Dylan's smile faded into a look of bewildered concern. Karen's voice grew hoarse as she recited a litany of accusations into her phone. "There's a stranger in the pool, and he's behaving suspiciously," she shrieked, her tone leaving no room for doubt that she believed a dire threat was unfolding. All around us, the previously carefree hum of a leisurely afternoon was replaced with nervous whispers and tentative glances exchanged among onlookers. Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens cut sharply through the sultry air. Blue and red lights flashed along the manicured driveways, announcing the arrival of local law enforcement. Two officers, faces set in professional lines of determination, alighted from a cruiser and moved cautiously toward our poolside. I could feel Dylan's grip on the pool's edge tighten, and a knot of apprehension formed in my stomach as I realized that what had begun as a minor intrusion had ballooned into a full-blown debacle. "Ma'am, please calm down," one of the officers said in a steady, measured tone as they reached our scene. Karen, however, was beyond reason at that moment. Her voice, sharp and unyielding, pleaded her case before the officers. "I'm protecting the community. I am on duty. Even if the HOA isn't officially monitoring the pool, it is my civic responsibility to ensure everyone's safety." Her words echoed over the water, each syllable laced with a righteousness that bordered on hysteria. I stepped forward, trying to bridge the chaos with calm explanation. "Officer, this is my property. Dylan is my guest, and I assure you the water is perfectly fine. Karen, please, let's resolve this calmly," I said, my tone even but imbued with urgency. Yet Karen's attention was fixed on Dylan as if he were the source of all the trouble. "Who is this? I don't recognize him," she demanded, eyes blazing with a mix of suspicion and indignation. I quickly clarified, "That's Dylan Rivera, a new neighbor and my friend. There's no threat here." Despite my attempts to inject reason into the escalating scene, Karen continued her tirade. With each passing moment, her voice rose higher, her accusations growing more fantastical by the second. "I see him there, lurking in the water," she cried out. "He's trespassing, and I won't allow it." Her threats, inexplicable and overblown, sent shockwaves through the small crowd that had gathered near the poolside. As the officers began to interview us, I could sense the weight of the moment. The evidence of Karen's overzealous intervention was laid bare in the chaos of her own words. The officers listened patiently, their expressions unreadable yet clearly focused on restoring order. In that charged atmosphere, the peaceful afternoon had transformed into a tableau of suburban strife. Dylan, once the embodiment of easy friendliness, now appeared visibly rattled, his gentle features replaced by furrowed brows and cautious glances around the pool. Meanwhile, Karen continued to wield her phone as though it were a badge of righteous authority. Each shout, every wild gesture, amplified the absurdity of the situation, a moment where the boundaries between civic duty and personal vendetta blurred. Finally, one of the officers spoke firmly, "Ma'am, you are trespassing on private property. I must insist that you leave immediately." The declaration, punctuated by the steady reassurance of law enforcement, hung in the air. For a long, suspended moment, the pool was silent except for the gentle splashes of water. But Karen, refusing to yield, prepared to retort as if to continue her crusade. In that critical juncture, the sirens, the flashing lights, and the unwavering authority of the officers all converged, signaling that the tempest of tension had reached its peak. It was now clear that this wasn't merely a moment of miscommunication or a minor misunderstanding, it was a collision of suburban pride, personal freedom, and the often ridiculous intrusion of a self-appointed protector. As I looked from Karen to Dylan and back, I realized that the calm I had once enjoyed was shattering under the pressure of such absurdity. With my heart pounding, I braced myself for what would come next, knowing that, no matter how turbulent the moment, we were all about to witness a surreal turning point in the days ahead. In the midst of Karen's relentless tirade and as tensions reached their peak, the sound of approaching sirens shattered the heavy, humid air over Oakwood Estates. Blue and red lights danced along the pristine walkways as a police cruiser pulled up to the poolside. Two officers emerged with calm authority, their expressions set in professional determination. I, Mason Tilden, and my friend Dylan Rivera exchanged anxious glances as the officers advanced. "Ma'am, please calm down," one officer addressed Karen in a measured tone. But she refused to yield. With her phone clutched tightly, Karen continued to holler accusations at Dylan, who was now awkwardly treading water near the deep end. Her voice, raw with indignation, boomed, "There's a stranger in the pool. I won't allow trespassing on these grounds." Her words were punctuated by erratic gestures, each one more dramatic than the last. I stepped forward, trying to restore calm. "Officer, this is my property. Dylan is my guest. The water is safe, I tested it myself this morning," I explained. My voice, though steady, betrayed the stress of the escalating scene. Yet Karen was undeterred. Her eyes, shielded by oversized sunglasses, sparkled with a mix of righteous anger and disbelief as she fixed her gaze on Dylan. "Who is this? I don't recognize him," she demanded, her voice pitching higher with each syllable. Dylan offered a timid greeting, but his friendly smile had now faded into uncertainty under Karen's unyielding scrutiny. The officers listened attentively as Karen launched into a frenetic monologue. Every detail from her perspective, the mysterious behavior, the alleged trespassing, and even her outlandish claims about water quality, spilled out in a rapid-fire recital. With each statement, the gathered onlookers shifted uneasily, murmuring among themselves as the suburban drama unfolded. Recognizing that the situation was spiraling beyond simple misunderstanding, one of the officers issued a firm directive, "Ma'am, you are trespassing on private property. Please leave immediately, or we will have to take further action." The words echoed sharply in the tense silence that momentarily fell over the pool area. At this point, Karen's resolve only hardened. "I'm protecting the community," she declared, raising her voice in defiance as her finger pressed the call button on her phone once more. The heated exchange intensified as the officers continued to question her, seeking coherent details about her claims. Meanwhile, I could sense Dylan growing more uncomfortable as he silently edged closer to the pool's edge. The officers, maintaining their calm and methodical approach, began to document the unfolding events. They asked for identification and noted down every detail of the confrontation. Every so often, one of them would turn to me for clarification. "Sir, can you confirm that you are the property owner and that Mr. Rivera is your guest?" they asked. I nodded and reiterated, "Yes, that is correct." Even as the officers tried to impose order, Karen's defiance escalated further. "I demand to see this stranger removed from the pool," she shrieked, her voice quivering with passion. The situation had grown so intense that even the normally composed Dylan was visibly rattled. I realized that Karen's actions were less about water safety and more about an obsession with imposing her own version of community standards. After a tense few minutes that felt like an eternity, one of the officers spoke with clear finality. "Ma'am, if you do not leave the property immediately, we will be forced to arrest you for trespassing and resisting our instructions." His tone, firm and uncompromising, left little room for debate. The air vibrated with the gravity of the moment. At last, Karen's defiant expression faltered, her eyes darted nervously as she weighed her options in the face of undeniable authority. In the ensuing seconds, as the cruiser lights flashed softly in the background, Karen's tirade subsided. The officers took a few more statements from me and Dylan while the onlookers watched silently. Although the tension remained palpable, order had begun to reassert itself over the chaos. In that charged moment, the combination of professional intervention and the undeniable weight of evidence appeared to have forced Karen into a reluctant, if temporary, de-escalation. But even as the pool returned to a tentative calm, I sensed that this dramatic confrontation was only a prelude to further upheaval. Deep within, I knew that the absurdity, and the consequences, of today's events would ripple far beyond our private oasis. In the days following the police intervention, the drama had ignited a fervor throughout Oakwood Estates. Word of the tumult at my pool spread like wildfire, and soon, the community was buzzing with discussions about rules, privacy, and the proper conduct of our so-called guardians of order. What began as a singular incident involving Karen had now transcended into a full-scale debate about the very essence of suburban life. A community forum was quickly scheduled at the Oakwood Estates Community Center. The room buzzed with energy as residents, some outraged and others merely amused, gathered to deliberate on the incident. With every chair filled and every eye fixed upon the dais, I, Mason Tilden, was invited to share my account. Alongside me was Dylan Rivera, still recovering from the ordeal, his expression a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism that change might be on the horizon. The meeting began with a flurry of administrative remarks by the HOA board. But it didn't take long before the conversation shifted to the incident at the pool. One by one, residents recounted their versions of events, painting a vivid picture of absurdity and misplaced authority. Many spoke of Karen's overbearing presence and her seemingly self-appointed role as the arbiter of all matters concerning property and safety. "It's as if she believes she's the sole custodian of perfection in our community," one elderly gentleman remarked, his voice trembling between indignation and amusement. I took the floor, explaining calmly yet passionately how a simple desire to improve my home had inadvertently become a battleground. I recounted the details, the replacement of the aging door, the installation of modern amenities, and the subsequent confrontation that spiraled into chaos when Karen intruded with a misguided sense of duty. I spoke of the importance of individual expression and of allowing diversity in taste, even in a community as meticulously maintained as Oakwood Estates. My words resonated in the packed hall, eliciting nods of agreement and murmurs of support. One notable moment came when a young resident, clearly frustrated by past repressive measures, stood up and said, "We should celebrate our differences, not punish them." Her remark, delivered with youthful defiance, echoed through the room and steered the conversation toward the need for reform. The collective sentiment began to crystallize into a clear demand, that the HOA's enforcement policies be re-examined, and that no single individual, even one as determined as Karen, should have unchecked authority over our personal choices. Reginald Finch, a retired attorney from a nearby block who had joined the forum as a community advocate, lent his support by outlining the legal inconsistencies in the HOA's bylaws. He argued passionately that such draconian measures not only curtailed personal freedoms but also undermined the very spirit of community cooperation. His eloquent remarks, citing obscure legal precedents and even references to local traditions, captivated many and shifted the mood toward hopeful transformation. As the forum wound down, a vote was taken to establish a review committee, a balanced panel to re-examine the rules regarding property appearance and communal standards. The decision was unanimous, and the energy in the room was electric with promise. Even Karen, who had been a vocal proponent of strict regulations, appeared visibly chastened by the collective outcry. Her once imposing stance had been softened, and though she maintained her opinions, it was clear the community was no longer willing to tolerate her unilateral dictates. That evening, as I left the community center with Dylan by my side, the air felt lighter. There was an unspoken understanding among the residents, a shared commitment to rebuilding our neighborhood's harmony through inclusivity and respect. The meeting had achieved more than just airing grievances, it had sparked a movement. The idea that our community could evolve, that we could celebrate rather than stifle our unique tastes, filled me with cautious optimism for the future. In that moment it became clear that the incident at the pool, as chaotic and absurd as it had been, was a catalyst for real change. The community's final reckoning with the overreach of one individual marked the beginning of a new era for Oakwood Estates, a time when every resident's voice mattered, and even the most unpopular opinions could lead to positive transformation. In the weeks that followed the community forum, a palpable calm settled over Oakwood Estates. The dramatic events at my pool had slowly ebbed away, replaced by a renewed focus on unity and progress. My backyard oasis once again became a place of relaxation, albeit with a newfound awareness of its turbulent history. While the HOA board painstakingly reviewed the bylaws and the review committee began drafting reforms, life resumed in many familiar ways. I noticed neighbors engaging in friendly conversations, and Dylan's easy smile returned as he and I resumed our quiet afternoons by the pool. The air, once charged with tension, now carried a gentle optimism that spoke of fresh beginnings. It wasn't long before subtle changes began to reflect the community's shifting mindset. The new guidelines promised a more inclusive approach to property aesthetics, ensuring that individual tastes would no longer be punished under the guise of preserving uniformity. Word spread that restrictions on personal expression might soon be relaxed, a welcome change embraced by many. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of Karen moving about with a subdued air. Though still determined in her own right, the zeal with which she once enforced every trivial rule had noticeably diminished. I even observed her at community gatherings, her strict demeanor softened, as if she too was beginning to understand that our diversity was something to be celebrated rather than stifled. One bright afternoon, as I lounged by the pool with Dylan, the gentle hum of conversation and laughter among nearby residents served as a reminder that life could return to a state of harmonious normalcy. The pool, once the epicenter of a ridiculous standoff, had reclaimed its role as our communal sanctuary, a place where people could relax, converse, and simply be themselves. The changes in Oakwood Estates were more than administrative, they were personal. The community had collectively learned that when everyone's voice was heard, even the most absurd situations could lead to meaningful transformation. The storm of chaos and confrontation had passed, leaving in its wake lessons on humility, acceptance, and the value of truly listening to one another. In the midst of that calm, I found solace and a renewed sense of purpose. I realized that sometimes the most challenging moments pave the way for the most significant progress. With every ripple in the pool, the echoes of our shared experience reminded me that while change is never easy, it is inevitable, and, often, a source of our greatest strength. As the dust settled following the tumultuous events at my pool, Oakwood Estates began to shift toward a quieter, more reflective phase. The chaotic confrontation had left its mark, not just on the property, but on the hearts and minds of every resident. While the incident had once drawn sharp lines between conformity and personal freedom, it eventually became a powerful catalyst for change. In the immediate aftermath, Karen was forced to face both legal repercussions and social ostracism. Fines were levied for her persistent rule enforcement, and her once unquestioned authority on pool safety was quietly stripped away by a reformed HOA. Many residents, who had previously cowered under the weight of her tirades, now found the courage to speak up in favor of a more inclusive approach. The local media picked up on the story too, and what had been an embarrassing personal ordeal for me evolved into a broader narrative of suburban awakening. Neighbors across Oakwood Estates began to question the status quo, leading to heated discussions at community gatherings and even in the casual corridor chats by the mailboxes. For my part, I continued to enjoy my pool, now a symbol of resilience and reclaimed freedom. Dylan and I resumed our tranquil swims and revived our light-hearted conversations, both silently acknowledging that our shared ordeal had brought us closer as friends and neighbors. Every ripple in the water reminded me that even in moments of crisis, there is room for quiet recovery and renewed hope. The HOA's newly established review committee also played a pivotal role in this transformation. Over several weeks, they revised the outdated guidelines governing property aesthetics, proposing policies that respected individual taste while still ensuring community cohesion. These measures not only softened the rigid standards imposed by the past but also paved the way for greater community involvement in decision-making. Looking back, the repercussions of that day, filled with tension, confusion, and confrontation, became a source of unexpected renewal. Where once strict rules had divided us, a more empathetic and adaptive spirit now seemed to prevail. Oakwood Estates was slowly emerging as a community where differences were celebrated rather than censured. For me, the incident had been both a personal test and a public lesson. A reminder that the courage to stand for one's choices can spark collective change. With a quiet smile and a sense of humble satisfaction, I embraced this new chapter where harmony wasn't achieved by uniformity but through understanding, respect, and shared purpose. Just as Oakwood Estates began to settle into its new rhythm of inclusivity and renewal, fate threw us yet another unexpected twist. One sunny morning, as I was tending to my garden by the pool, I discovered an unusual envelope in the mailbox, a letter from a local law firm. The letter revealed that I had been named as a beneficiary in the will of a distant relative I'd never known, Great Aunt Millicent. Great Aunt Millicent, notorious in family lore for her eccentric tastes and rebellious spirit, had amassed a modest fortune along with an old mansion on the outskirts of town. The will came with a singular condition: I had to transform the dilapidated estate into a community center for Oakwood Estates. Initially, I was taken aback. What could be more ironic than being bequeathed a grand house on the condition of serving the community that had seen my recent trials? After careful thought, the idea began to appeal to me. A community center could serve as a hub for dialogue, creativity, and mutual support, an ideal antidote to the rigid, isolationist tendencies that had once plagued our neighborhood. I quickly set about planning the restoration, gathering support from neighbors who, inspired by the recent upheavals, were eager to contribute ideas and volunteer their time. The mansion, though weathered and in need of repairs, soon became a symbol of renewal. Under my guidance, a team of enthusiastic residents transformed it into a warm, welcoming space complete with a multipurpose hall, meeting rooms, and even a small cafe. The community center started hosting a range of activities. From art classes to neighborhood potlucks and even open forums discussing how best to celebrate our newfound diversity. One of the most popular features of the center was its outdoor pool area, which, thanks to recent events, had become a rallying point for neighbors coming together in laughter and camaraderie. Every event held at the center seemed to weave together the many strands of our community's story, a tapestry of humor, resilience, and the transformative power of togetherness. As the center neared its grand opening, excitement buzzed through Oakwood Estates. Invitations were sent, and on the opening day, the turnout was extraordinary. Among the crowd, I even caught a glimpse of Karen, once the relentless enforcer of outdated rules, standing quietly at the back. Her expression was one of subdued curiosity, as if she were re-evaluating her own long-held beliefs amidst the vibrant new life around her. The grand opening was not only a celebration of the renovated mansion but also a public testament to the journey we had all endured, from poolside confrontations and harsh criticisms to a community determined to embrace progress and diversity. I delivered a short speech, thanking every neighbor for their contributions, and reminding everyone that change, often sparked by adversity, could lead to unexpected gifts. For me, inheriting Great Aunt Millicent's estate wasn't just a stroke of luck, it was a clarion call to build a better tomorrow for all of Oakwood Estates. And as I looked around at the smiling faces gathered under the banner of our new community center, I knew that even amidst life's wildest twists, there was always room for hope and unity. In the months following the transformation of Great Aunt Millicent's mansion into the Oakwood Community Center, our once fractured neighborhood began to experience a true renaissance. The community center became a vibrant hub for activities and discussions, drawing residents together in ways that were once unimaginable. Even the lingering scars of past conflicts slowly healed under the warmth of collective effort and understanding. One brisk autumn day, as I was wrapping up a community workshop in the center's newly renovated meeting hall, I spotted a familiar figure approaching. It was Karen, her once fiery expression now tempered by what appeared to be genuine contrition. With cautious steps, she made her way over, her gaze downcast as if she were wrestling with memories of past transgressions. "Arthur," she began softly, using the name I had long ago come to accept even as conflict unfolded, I want to apologize for everything." Her voice was tentative, almost broken, and it was the first time I'd seen her offer such an olive branch. I paused, taken aback by her unexpected change in demeanor. After years of stern pronouncements and rigid enforcement, here was Karen, extending an apology that carried the weight of hard-earned humility. I assured her that the past was not easily forgotten, but that every new beginning was an opportunity to learn and grow. "Apology accepted, Karen," I said with sincere calm. "We all make mistakes. What matters is that we move forward together." Her eyes, though still wary, hinted at relief and perhaps even hope. In that moment, I understood that the endless cycle of confrontation had given way to reconciliation, a true turning point for Oakwood Estates. In the weeks that followed, the community center blossomed into a space of healing and innovation. From yoga classes to lively town hall meetings and even art shows celebrating local talent, the center became a testament to the power of unity and change. Neighbors, once divided by petty disputes and unyielding standards, now found common ground through shared experiences and collective joy. As for Karen, she gradually assumed a new role. While no longer the relentless enforcer of outdated rules, she dedicated herself to helping manage the community center. Her efforts, though modest at first, eventually earned her the quiet respect of many who had once feared her. Over time, she even began joining communal activities, her presence evolving from one of overbearing scrutiny to that of a thoughtful contributor. On a crisp winter morning, as I sipped coffee on my porch and watched families gather at the community center, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The tumultuous journey. From poolside chaos to legal battles, from angry confrontations to heartfelt apologies, had culminated in an era of genuine community spirit. Oakwood Estates, with all its quirks and past conflicts, had finally embraced a future defined by collaboration and compassion. In the final analysis, our story became a testament to the transformative power of second chances. From the absurdity of a private pool incident to the unexpected inheritance of an old mansion, every twist and turn led us to a place of unity and renewal. And as I looked around at our thriving community, a place where individuality was cherished and differences were celebrated, I knew that this was only the beginning of many new, promising chapters.